Hello, my most amazing artist. I hope everybody's having an awesome day so far today and that you're ready for a little bit of science and art as we keep on going through that Zany Scientist Week. Today, we have a lot in store, but before we jump in, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with our art class catchphrase. I make messes. I make mistakes, but deep inside, I got what it takes. I am an artist. Awesome, guys. Before we get rolling, let's give a big old shout out to our sponsor, Dixon Ticonderoga, for our science experiment today. We're going to be using chalk pastels. Now, you could use chalk pastels if you have them. They're like artist chalks that you probably have used in art class, or you could use sidewalk chalk. The chalk pastels I will be using are the ones made by Dixon Ticonderoga. It's their brand called Creativity Street Chalk Pastels, and they are going to make for some really awesome experiments today. So I'm so thankful for them to sponsoring today's science experiment. The other supplies you're going to need are paper. You can use any kind of paper for drawing. Pencil, if you want to draw with a pencil. I'll be drawing with a marker. I'll also be coloring with crayons, but you could use crayons, color pencils, markers, anything that you have on hand. And then for our science experiment, chalk, a basin of water, which basically just means like a big bowl, or I'm using a lasagna dish to keep my water in, something to scrape the chalk with. I'll be using an old gift card and some paper. That's it. Simple stuff today, but simple stuff for awesome artwork. We're going to be using the elements of art today, and our focus is going to be space, and then once again, value and form, but we haven't really focused much on space. We are going to be creating the illusion that things are popping out of space or coming closer to you, like that middle beaker right there. Our word for the day is going to be transform. Whoop, whoop. If I say transform, whoop, whoop, you say transform. Whoop, whoop. You already know what to do. Because what might look like your average everyday in a science experimental lab suddenly becomes very explosive with a little transformation, which you'll learn how to do today. All right, pinkies out before we get started. That means you're going to repeat after me. I pinky promise that no matter what, I will do my best. I will try my hardest, and I will have a positive attitude. Mwah. All right, guys, let's get started. Today we're going to make a work of art that can transform. You could do a work of art like this so many different ways by drawing one image here and then having it change or transform to something totally different there. Today we're going to focus on beaker bottles, but you already know how to draw a scientist. So you could even think of ways where you could draw a scientist's face here. Maybe this part could be the mouth that could open up with something happening inside. I'll let you think about that, or you could follow along with me. So I'm going to set this aside. The first thing we have to do is start with a piece of paper. You could use a smaller piece of paper like I did, or a larger regular size sheet of sketchbook paper. I'm going to use that size today. The first thing you want to do is make sure that your piece of paper is vertical. Vertical means that it's going up and down. And I'm going to take the bottom of my paper and walk it up to the top. Now, before I just kind of smooth it down and fold it in half and accidentally get it all wonky, I'm gonna match up my edges really well. Hold it still with one hand. Hold it still, hand. Got it, Miss Stevens. Use my other hand to smooth down the bump. Now, I have officially folded my paper in half. The next thing I'm going to do is take the top of my paper, and if I peel back the top of my paper, you might notice that there's another piece hiding underneath. Leave that guy sitting right there on the table. Leave him right there. I'm going to peel back this toward the bottom, match up my edges, and then smooth it out. Easy. Okay, now that my paper has been folded in half, and then I brought this part down to here, my paper's ready to go. Look, it now matches this one. My drawing that I'm going to begin with, the beakers, I will draw that on this folded paper. So keep your paper just like this, and then it will, actually I'm gonna rotate it so mine matches. So that when it opens up, we have this on the inside. Okay, so I've got my paper folded, and I'm ready to get started. Now what I'm gonna do is this. I'm going to be drawing, I'm gonna put a marker there to hold that guy in place. I'm going to be drawing my beakers on here first, and then jumping over and drawing the same thing again here. So if you want to, you could watch me draw here, and then follow along with me here. So if you notice on my work of art, we're gonna be focusing a lot on two elements of art today. We're gonna be talking a lot about space. Now, when I say space, I don't mean outer space. I mean the space or the depth that you can create in a work of art. Look at these three beakers. Which one is the closest to you? If you guess the middle one, then you're right. How did I do that? How did I make this beaker look like it was the closest out of these three? Two ways. The first thing I did was I made sure that it was closest to the bottom of the paper. That creates the illusion that it's closer to you. The other thing I did was I had this beaker overlap this one and overlap that one, making it look as though it were in front of these two and that these two are in the background. This is space, and we'll be creating space in our artwork today. So let's first though talk about how to create that beaker. Speaking of space, we want to show that it's not flat like a shape, but that it's fat like a form. It comes out of that piece of paper. And I'm going to start with the top of the beaker. Did you know that the opening of a vase or beaker of a jar, it's actually called the mouth? That's the mouth or the opening. And the mouth or the opening of a jar, I happen to have one right here with marker juice being made. We know that it's a circle, but from the point of view that you are looking at it, it has the illusion of being an oval. So I'm going to start with that oval shape. I'll begin with an oval shape for the mouth of the beaker. And then you'll notice that there's a smaller oval inside. All right, that was my practice beaker. I'm going to draw with a marker. You might want to draw with a pencil first and then trace over your lines with a marker. All right, I'm going to start in the middle at the top. I'm drawing an oval. And now I'm going to place a smaller oval inside. Now, if your oval is already really small and you can't squeeze a smaller oval inside, it's okay. Put an oval around it. My oval is big enough for me to put one inside. There we go. Now, that's the mouth of the vase or a beaker. This part of a vase or a beaker is called the neck. The neck on mine is going to come straight down with two vertical lines. And on mine, I think I'll make those two vertical lines. I'm going to practice drawing first. Two vertical lines are coming down to my fold. So I think I'll draw one here and I'll draw another one right there. Awesome. Now this part is actually called the body. So I'm going to create the body of this beaker. And if you notice on this one, I used a curved line here. I'm using another curved line there. And you might also notice that my vase is exactly the same on both sides. When something is exactly the same on both sides, it's called symmetrical. I'm going to connect, meaning if I drew a line right down the middle, it's exactly the same on both sides. Now, I don't want a line right down the middle of my beaker, so I'm not going to draw it here, and I'm just going to go and erase it from there. Okay, now I've got a beaker. What I need to do next up is add liquid to my beaker. Your liquid could be all the way up to here, could be right there. It's up to you, but I'm going to have mine be right here. It's going to stretch all the way from one side with a curve that goes down and then goes back up. I think I'll do the same thing here. Curve that goes down and then comes back up. And then the opposite kind of line in the background to show that it's going back into space. Awesome. Okay, now to draw that this is a glass vase or beaker, to kind of show that, I'm going to draw some lines that show that it has some reflections on it. I might also add some bubbles. So I'm going to put a couple of circles inside, and to show that those bubbles have a reflection, I'll draw a little bit of a curved line. There we go. Okay, one beaker complete. Now let's talk about how to draw these others to show that they are behind this one, that they are in the background. So to do that, I'm going to start over here. In fact, I'll draw it first right here. I'm going to draw an oval. Oh, this one's a little small to put an oval inside, so I'll just go around it. All right, I'll try that here. Oval. This one's nice and big. Put one inside. Now I'm going to draw the neck. Same thing. Vertical lines that come down, and this is where things get a little tricky because I'm trying to show that this face is in front of that one. So two things, I need to have this one overlap or be in front of, and I also have to make sure this vase doesn't come down as far on the paper as that one. So to begin, I'm going to draw a line like this. It's going to start here, diagonal, and then it stops when it bumps into that vase. I'm going to do a diagonal on this side. This line can be a little bit longer. Now, if I imagine the vase would probably come around this way, if I could see through it, I'm going to curve this line just like that. Now I've created the illusion that this one is in front and this one is in the background. Foreground, background. I'm going to add a little bit of liquid, some reflections, and some bubbles. Now, if I'm going a little fast, that's okay. You can just press the pause button, stop, and get all caught up. All right, I'm going to do the same thing over here. This time I will go a little bit faster because by now we are beaker making experts. So I did two ovals, line, line that are vertical. I'm going to draw this one, I think, with the same kind of diagonals as that one. Connect with a curve. Now, the reason I always make a curved line is because the bottom of a jar is rounded. It's circular. So I want to show that by drawing a curved line. It also helps me create the illusion that my jar is coming out of space. All right, so now this one you'll notice I filled it a little bit more up and adding some bubbles and maybe some reflections. Okay, how easy was that? Now for the background, I think I'll just add some circles in a variety of sizes, maybe adding some of those little curves to show that they're reflective. If you want to show that some bubbles popped, then you can just take your marker, imagine a little polka dot right there on your paper, and just have little lines go away from that imaginary spot. So I have a little spot that I've imagined, polka dot, or the lines are going away from that spot. Whoa, look at that. Okay, now that this part is complete, let's work on the explosion on the inside. So I'm going to open my paper now. Right here, in this space is where I'm going to be drawing my explosions. But you know what? I don't have a nice crease right here to show me where to stop drawing. So if you don't have a crease right there either, go ahead and take your paper, take it to that middle fold line and create yourself a crease, and that'll help you know where to stop drawing. So I know that my explosion has to happen in here. Okay, when I do my explosion, I want the one beaker's explosion, the one that's in the middle, to be the one that pops out the most. So to do that, I'm going to use curved lines to create a cloud. It's almost like I'm drawing the letter C over and over again. All right, I'm going to give it a shot. Curve, curve. I can even have a curve that loops around. Curve, curve, curve. It looks like a great big cloud. An explosion. And to give it a little bit of texture, maybe I'll make it look a little bit more cartoony. I'll add some lines like that. Okay, that's the biggest Beaker's explosion, or the one that was in the foreground. This one, since it's behind that beaker, I'm gonna have the line this explosion overlap that one. That's why it's hiding behind this one. Again, I can add some more texture. And maybe this one, it's just gonna also be behind it. Or you could just make a small little cloud. It's up to you. Okay, so I've got my 3 explosions for my 3 beakers. Now to create the illusion of sound, I'm gonna use these kind of lines. Give it a little bit of energy. Help it show movement, that things are really moving away from those beakers. I can even add some little shards of glass, some popped bubbles, anything else to fill up those spaces to really help show your movement. Now, when you're finished, you can think about color. Another way for us to really create space in our artwork is with shading and using value. So if you look at my beakers, they look like they're kind of popping out from space. I'm going to use crayons for this. I'm going to use this color crayon, I think, for my beaker. Here's how I'm going to change my beaker and create the illusion that it's popping out. I'm coloring around the edge of my beaker, and I'm pressing really hard with my crayon. Staying in my lines, pressing really hard with my crayon to create a nice dark value. I'm creating a nice dark value. Okay, now I want to gradually make that value get a little bit lighter. So now, instead of pressing super hard, I'm pressing a little lighter as I get toward the middle to help create the illusion that my bottle is popping out. And again, I always rotate my paper, and I'm getting lighter in value and lighter. Rotate the paper, pressing hard, getting lighter and lighter. Rotate, pressing hard, then lightening up on the pressure to create a lighter value. Look at that. It looks like that is really popping out. I'm gonna try the same thing here. Dark to light, dark to light. Sweet. And of course, this part is gonna be nice and dark. Now, to create my potion inside, I'm just gonna color this same way, nice and dark around the edges, and then lighter and lighter towards the center. And it helps to have the 2 colors blend in, because one color is the color of the beaker bottle, and then the other color is the color of the potion. And notice I'm getting lighter and lighter, pressing hard, and then getting lighter and lighter. And then I'll color in my bubbles. All right, I'm gonna speed up a little bit and show you a little bit more about shading and creating the illusion of 3D. All right, guys, when I color in the potion part of my beaker, I'm doing kind of the same thing. I'm pressing hard around the edges and going lighter toward the center. To create those bubbles to make them look like a sphere, I'm coloring nice and hard around the edges and going lighter toward the source of light. We did something very similar to this last week when we did our robots. This really helps create the illusion that my flat drawing is popping out of space. We are art-making magicians. Isn't that great? I mean, how cool is it that we can take a flat piece of paper and create the illusion that things are popping out? We'll do the same thing with the explosion inside. To make my explosion look like a 3-dimensional cloud, Once again, I'm doing the same thing, coloring really hard around the edges, applying a lot of pressure to create a nice dark value. It does make my hand a little bit tired, but rotating or turning that paper does help. And as you get toward the center, you go lighter and lighter in value. That again creates that illusion that that cloud isn't flat, but it's fat. It's a form and it's popping right out of space. I cannot wait to see what your transformation pictures look like. All right, guys, for today's science portion of our Zany Scientist Week, we're going to do something called floating chalk prints. And these are just a couple of really cool examples of what we'll be making today. You'll be making these really beautiful papers with these supplies. I've got my cookie sheet that I've been using all week for all of my experiments. That way it helps to capture some of the mess. I have like a little lasagna dish, a tray, a pie pan would work great. You could even use a cookie sheet to put water in. So I have about 1 inch of water at the bottom of this pan, and then you'll need something to scratch or scrape the chalk with. I'm just using an old gift card, and you'll need chalk. Now, there's a couple of different kinds of chalk. There's something called chalk pastel, which is what I'll be using today. This is the chalk that artists use to create their artwork. You probably have used something like this in your art class. If you don't have chalk pastels, then you could try using sidewalk chalk. But here's the difference. Sidewalk chalk is very light in color. We call that pastel. You'll probably find that there's a lot of light blue, a lot of white, a light pink, and light yellow if you have sidewalk chalk. Those colors might not show up as well on a piece of paper as the colors that I'm using. So if you're going to use sidewalk chalk, why not give it a shot, but stick with the darkest colors that you have of sidewalk chalk. Or, even better, try using chalk pastel. If you don't have either, then you can just watch this portion and know that at some point when you get your little kitten mittens on some chalk, you can give floating chalk prints a try. All right, so I'm gonna grab a color, and my little tray of water is kind of dirty because I've been experimenting already. I'm gonna take a piece of chalk and I'm holding it over the tray of water. Now, chalk is not light, it's pretty heavy. Chalk is made out of pigment. Pigment is another word for color. All of that color has been compressed into this rectangular prism shape. Sometimes people even call this compressed chalk. So what you're going to do today is release those little particles of pigment onto the surface of your water. To do that, you'll use something to scrape the chalk with, and I'm using an old card, and I'm just scraping the chalk particles toward the water. So I'm aiming toward the water, away from me, and I'm scraping it into such small, fine particles that it's no longer heavy, that it no longer would sink to the bottom of the water, but you can see it's kind of now floating. That's how it got its name, floating chalk. You could use as many different colors as you like. I'm just scraping some purple, a little bit of blue. Why not see how yellow would look with all of that? What you might notice is that the chalk is even starting to expand or move away. When I get ready to pull a print, we know about that because we pulled prints last week during Robot Week. When I get ready to pull a print, I'm only going to be pulling a print from paper that's this big. You could use an index card, a piece of paper from your sketchbook, something that's a little thicker than loose leaf paper would be ideal. So that's why an index card would be great. And here's what I'm about to do. That chalk is right now just sitting on the surface of the water, which is the very top of the water. I want to capture all of that chalk that's sitting on the surface. To do that, I want you to imagine that this is the surface of my water. I'm going to take my piece of paper and bend it like the letter U. And then I will lower it to the surface of the water where the chalk is sitting and just flatten it onto the surface. I don't want the paper to go below the surface, it's just going to sit on top. And then I'll pull it off and we'll see what happens. All right, so here I go. I've got my piece of paper. I'm bending it like the letter U. I'm lowering it down onto the surface of the chalk. I'll lower one side, do a little tap dance with my fingers. If some of the water gets on the back of my paper, that's okay. Lower this side too, do a little tap dance, and then pull it off. Look at that! It captured some of that beautiful chalk. Those white spaces, that's probably where the water just didn't have a lot of chalk, or maybe I wasn't able to capture it. I'm gonna put my paper in right there again where that little white spot is. See if I can capture it. There we go, it got a little bit more color here, and now I need to let this dry. I'm gonna do one more. So again, I'm just going to take some of my chalk, scrape it onto the surface. I don't even have to clean my water pan because the paper cleaned the chalk. It scooped up the chalk for me. The other cool thing is, sometimes when you use chalk, when you're finished with your work of art, it looks very, very dusty. And even though your artwork is finished, it can still be really, really messy. The cool thing about a chalk print is, once it's dry, it's no longer messy. Look at that, it doesn't smear, it stays put. So I'm gonna see what this chalk will print like, and I challenge you to make some of your own. And when you're finished, you might have this beautiful collection of chalk printed papers. What could you do with those? Could you turn them into a card? Use them for papers for collage? The possibilities are endless, but I would definitely keep a stash of all of these beautiful chalk papers and do something fun and fabulous with them. Thank you so much for joining me with Art Class with Cassie. I hope you had so much fun. Don't forget to go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you can stay up to date on videos. They've been dropping here quite a bit lately, and if you would give this video a big thumbs up, that helps let other creative and scientific folks just like you know to join the fun. Bye guys!